مم، يما موال الهوى، يما مواليها، ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم النذر فيها.
Good morning, Nisreen. So glad you're here and it's working. Let me play some of your music for us. Good morning, Tom. Tom is the head of the Brooklyn for Peace group of advocates for Palestine. So everybody, welcome to Zoom Palestine. We're privileged to have the wonderful singer, significant preserver of Palestinian culture, Nisreen Hajaj Azraqi here. Thank you, Nisreen, for coming. And
Yay, thank you very much. Thank you
I
very
had
much,
a
Dr. Jacqueline.
horrible moment this morning where I thought I had been hacked by Mossad. My internet wasn't working. I got an email from Gmail that I had malicious content in my Gmails, so I can't get my Gmails. And what it turns out is that I thought I had set up automatic payment, but unfortunately, um, the automatic payments weren't going through, so it was just I hadn't paid my bill. So,
Hey,
and
no worries.
so thank God Mossad hasn't gotten me yet. Tom, did you see that documentary on Ghislaine Maxwell last night?
No, I didn't.
Oh my God, you have to watch it, but don't eat before because you'll throw up. It was so, Robert Maxwell was probably killed by Mossad. Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein deep into the Israeli intelligence attempts to influence foreign policy. It was, I mean, I thought it was bad, but this documentary was really amazing. I forget the channel it was on, but it's worth seeing. It's called Chasing Ghislaine, and it shows the
Jackie?
Chasing Ghislaine.
Oh.
Ghislaine Maxwell. She's right now on trial. She's her case, and
Yes.
the depths that Israel has sunk to silence criticism of its treatment of the Palestinians, and get whatever it wanted from American politicians is just, it's worse than you even think. It's an excellent documentary. And I sent an email to Brooklyn for Peace people to try to catch it. I'm not sure where it is. But anyhow, welcome to Zoom Palestine, those of us who are here. And then we're also on Facebook Live here. It's why I have my phone here, and people will pop up from around the world. We have some followers in India, actually, who show up. And then I turn this into a YouTube, and then I send the link out to everybody. So we always start out with what's going on in the world. And my great source of information is Electronic Intifada. So I'm going to do a share screen again so that we can check on the let and there's some very interesting stuff this morning that let me see, where is my today's news? Here we go. Yeah, that the Israelis hacked that Israeli spy firm NSO that we had a program on a few weeks ago about Israeli spyware being sold to governments around the world. In Uganda, I think it was, they actually hacked into the US Embassy. So this is the first time it's been used against American government, embassies, that the Ugandan government used the NSO spyware to hack into the emails of US Embassy employees in Uganda. So this is a whole big deal because remember last month the government put NSO on a blacklist, and everybody, all the pro-Israeli entities were, oh, good morning, Samad Laskar from wherever you are on Facebook Live, that the pro-Israeli groups in this country were all screaming anti-Semitism and carrying on about why the NSO spyware was being blocked. And but Biden held firm on it, and now they hacked embassy email. So there's some interesting stuff to read about. And one of the things that is I found very interesting, and Tom, you too, because you've spent time in Jordan, is the what's going on in Jordan in terms of protesting. So the Jordanian people are protesting the pact with UAE and Israel. And there was big protests in Jordan last week, of course, that weren't covered on our media. And they were protesting in Amman because the latest thing is a deal that will supposedly see Jordanians sending electricity to Israel in exchange for desalinated seawater. And this was protests all across the country, opposing the kingdom's formal ties and close relations with Israel's, which many people see as a betrayal of the Palestinian cause. And, 85% of the Jordanian population now has Palestinian background. The deal to which the UAE is also a party appears to an effort to cement Jordan more firmly within so-called the Abraham Accords. And the only winner is going to be Israel. And there were videos posted all over, and the Jordanian authorities who've become much more further right. Actually, this started with the upcome of Daesh, of the growth of fundamentalism in Jordan threatened the government, so they felt they had to become more conservative. So they banned many media outlets, and this started, like almost maybe 10 years ago, where the Jordanian government started becoming much more conservative. So the authorities cracked down on protesters, arrested dozens, physically assaulted some, according to the human rights group Euromed Monitor, which calls for the unconditional release of all detainees. So good morning, Richard from Lebanon. Welcome, Richard. Hi, you finally got here on the actual time of the meeting. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
So that's one thing. Another interesting thing is that there are leaked emails that prove the EU tried to hide about the Palestine police mission. The EU has a police mission in Palestine, and they have a training scheme, and their training and their mission benefits the Israeli occupation. And they're trying to keep tabs on this thing called UPOL, COPS, is not easy, and the whole thing is very secretive. And this one reporter, David Cronin, has been called a terrorist by the EU because he tried to find out basic details about their activities, and the tried to interview the U.S. security coordinator for Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and the request was referred to the head of the UPOL cops, and then they decided that, quote, this person claims to be a journalist of Irish origin for the blog Electronic Intifada. The blog appears to be very anti-EU, and that he's a troublemaker, yada, yada, yada. So this is another example of Israel exerting its pervasive influence on people in that have out of the country in the United States and in the EU. We always think about Israeli pressuring the United States, but we don't often are not aware of what they're doing. Here's another article, this young man killed by Israel's negligence. Gada Abu Jameh and Sami Al-Amor had big plans for the future. The couple were planning to get released once Sami was released from jail, but he died early this month after being transferred from an Israeli prison to an Israeli hospital. And the human rights groups suspect that Sami died as a result of intentional medical neglect by his jailers. He had a congenital heart problem and other health issues during imprisonment, and he never received adequate care in Israel's Nafha prison and transferred to the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba, where he died. So this is another example of Israel's intention to eliminate Palestinians. And then an interesting article on how Israel is begging the world to keep paying the occupation bills. And they're trying to use other states to get aid to relieve Israel of its obligations under international law, and prolong and exaggerate the current state of extreme injustice in Palestine. And so they're trying to get third state donors to take care of the settlements and pay for the occupation. And the Shakid, who's the Israel's interior minister, who once said she wanted to exterminate Palestinian mothers who give birth to little snakes. How are your little snakes, Nisreen? I hope they're doing very well. And
my snakes are doing great, and they're being raised exactly how they need to be raised. Not snakes, but as human beings.
Right. And she also said, we should manage the conflict, not solve it. What Shakid meant is that Israel should exercise permanent apartheid rule over Israel. So that's, the latest from Electronic Intifada. And now we're going to have a wonderful opportunity to speak to Nisreen. So Nisreen, we played the music from it was the Ontario Palestinian Festival in 2016.
Yeah, that was the Palestinian Festival. First of all, thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Jacqueline. It's such a pleasure, and I want to thank everybody for their solidarity with Palestine. That was indeed from the Palestinian Festival in Ottawa in 2016. It's been a while since I've been up there to Canada now with the lockdowns and everything, but it was a great opportunity for me to be there.
Now, tell us how you have a very impressive background. You studied in Lebanon at the
I did.
We're in Lebanon, where Richard is right now.
Yeah.
And so where were you actually born?
So I was born in Kuwait, and I ironically was displaced because of the war, the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, as a child. And my parents moved back to their birthplace, which is Lebanon. The refugees, they were Palestinian refugees that grew up in Lebanon. And so it was only natural that we went back to where they are familiar with and where we owned a home. And from there, I grew up, and I knew I had I was very talented musically. So I joined the National Music Conservatory in Lebanon, and I studied music. And I'm sure probably Richard knows where the conservatory is in Beirut, but we've got Sinnerfield, and we've got by downtown Beirut too. So That's exactly where I made my debut as a Palestinian artist, or as an artist in general.
Welcome, Mohammed Pathan is joined us on Facebook Live. So you're in a conservatory. You have, I presume, classical music training. And what moved you? And you're a soprano. So what moved you to begin to be the singer, songstress for Palestine? When did you begin to start to get interested in preserving Palestinian musical heritage?
Sure. So listening to my parents' stories of how their parents were displaced from Palestine and how they grew up in refugee camps in Lebanon and the poverty and not having much to eat, or in their tin homes in very dire conditions, that just kind of grew on me, listening to these stories, and actually living close to refugee camps and going to visit family in refugee camps. I was able to see firsthand the suffering that the Palestinians endured in those refugee camps. So it just kind of, I grew up seeing all of that, and it really just left an impact in my heart that I really want to use my voice in a way that would just carry on to the world, our plight as Palestinians. So I started around, I was about 17 years old, and there was, I'm on air, Mama, sorry. There was a Palestinian band that was being formed, and I decided, my father told me, would you like to join something like that? It would be really awesome. Sorry about that. Okay, go.
All right,
We'll put paper in the shredder later, maybe. So I guess it's happened to the best of us at CNN. People, kiddos joining on.
Oh, I have my cats who usually jump on.
Oh, my cat just joined too a little bit ago. So
No.
yeah, I decided that I was gonna go give it a shot, and it was actually it just kind of strung a chord in my heart. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is my calling. I feel like through my voice, I could relay a big message to the world of who we are as Palestinians, what our plight is through our songs. And so far, it's been the most amazing decision I've made in my life. I did not want to go into the mainstream simply because there was so much, I would say it was so much commercialized. I wanted it to be more focused on a goal that I wanted to achieve, especially here living in the diaspora. I wanted it to, just a moment. I just wanted it to resonate in the diaspora. No, not right now. Later. You can have a paper to draw, but Mommy's having a really important presentation.
No, what's a paper?
You can put this one. Okay, so sorry about that. I wanted something to resonate. I wanted something to create an impact on the future generations, especially those living in the diaspora, second and third and generation, maybe fourth generation Palestinians now. I wanted that torch to be carried and people to preserve their heritage.
What was the reaction? I know when I hear you sing, there's something that resonates in my heart, because you have some very special quality in your singing. What was the reaction that you first had when you first sang with that Palestinian band, and then you continued on? What encouraged you to continue? Who were the big supporters you had in the beginning?
Right. I think it's just being received in a very positive way, in a very pleasant way. I transcribe a lot of feelings in the way that I sing, and I dance on the stage. And when I dance, I embody the older generation of our grandmothers and their ethnic dances. So when you see me like taking my kufiya and doing this is what women do with their scarves in weddings. When I'm doing the sahja, sahja is a dance that older women do, which is kind of like going back and forth with their hands. So I kind of embody that on stage, and I think people loved it. They love to see a young generation Palestinian who grew up in the diaspora still preserving and relaying the message through her presence on stage. I think this is really what made me have an impact on stage.
And who were the first? Can you think of individuals who first inspired you to continue to do it? What kept you going? Because this is not easy to do. What you're doing. you're outside the box. You're not doing commercial stuff. You're, the world has a lot of hostility to Palestinians. Anything with the P word is considered terrorism. What kept you, what motivated you to keep going?
Well, I know you've touched on a really important subject, Dr. Jacqueline, where whenever we're singing and our songs of resistance are considered to be maybe inciting some kind of terrorism, and I say it, and I'm really being sarcastic, because I don't think there's any terrorism and a right of people to exist and to resist an occupier. I mean, my grandparents were depopulated from their homes in Palestine. They were massacred in many of the villages, and that's why they fled to Lebanon. So hearing all these stories, and when I sing, or when I'm hearing other singers sing, I don't necessarily, I mean, other people might interpret that way, but I see it as a form of resistance. Everything's a form of resistance. Mahmoud Darwish embodied that in his poetry. So did Sami Al-Qasim. He did that in his poetry also, and many, many more. I think I was really influenced by Al-Ashiqeen band that was singing songs of resistance during, I believe, the 60s and 70s. And a lot from the belated Reem Al-Banna, may she rest in peace, of course. Because I have that classical voice, but I also come from a part of Palestine that's very famous and very popular, and that's the Galilee. And the Galilee is very famous for its having beautiful voices, and I really wanted to embody that. A voice from the Galilee, from the mountains. So I was able to create that through my voice, whether it being the long, powerful voices that people wanted to hear and enjoy. I was able to present that, and I was able to perform that. And that what made me a little bit different, because I was able to sing that style versus other, just classically trained, singers, Palestinian singers.
It's really interesting. I didn't know that about the Galilee, that they were known for its singing. That's very, very interesting. So in terms of Arabic singing, I mean, there's a lot of famous female Arabic singers. And how does your Galilean Palestinian approach to singing differ from the other Arab female singers? What's unique?
What's unique is that the voices are huge, are big, they're huge. They're I would say from a musical perspective, the octaves are bigger. I think the suffering was inherited of our people, was inherited through our voices. So you hear a lot of, I would say, feelings and agony in our voices. It's kind of like, I would make it similar more to, I wouldn't say Fairuz, but I would say more like Sabah. You hear that oomph in the voice, you hear that strength in the voice. So you get that a lot from people who lived in the mountains because of their terrain. Their terrain is rough. They do a lot more, walking uphill. So they have more lung capacity. So when they have more lung capacity, they've evolved. Their voices have evolved into much, much bigger voices. And we're talking octave wise. Yes.
Oh, it's different than the desert singing. Yeah.
Yes, the desert Bedouin style singing. Yes, it is different. Yes, and I'll be more than happy to give some examples.
That would be great.
Yep. Well, mommy's about to sing, so let's start with an oath. Okay. البعايد ما لنا دعوة ولا بعيد بعايد يعود المشتت والبعيد. قلبي بفرحة ما عدت أطرب ولا بعيد، وشبر من أرض بلادي مغتصب. يا هلي يا هلي يا هلي This is called a mawal. And you hear the oath. This is basically people standing on top of the mountains and creating that echo, that sound echo void between the mountain and the valley. And we're calling upon our people basically in this mawal. Basically it's saying we're so far away and we have no other source of happiness except that when we come back to our home. And we won't be able to do that until we liberate every single inch of our homeland. We can't do that. We can't do that while our homeland is being occupied.
You're involved, don't you have on your Facebook page, Allah the Return? Isn't that one of your campaigns that I saw on Facebook with you?
So many of the campaigns that I participate in are, we would say, peaceful resistance of the occupation. It is an assertion of our identity as Palestinians, whether it's been walking to Palestine or any kind of campaign that carries the message of resistance and our assertion to exist. I would love to be a part of, or I'm honored to be a part of, simply because we have no other means of resistance except resisting in the peaceful means. We are completely defenseless. We have no weapons or nothing to defend our countries with, and I totally believe we can attain peace through peaceful ways. And this is what happened in South Africa. And I believe Palestinian people are smart enough to be able to accomplish that over time. And it's not that we are going to win, we are winning. There are many people that are standing around the world, standing in solidarity with Palestinians. There are many people that now are withdrawing out of the Miss Universe competition because they don't want to stand for apartheid. They don't want to stand for these shameful acts that Israel is committing against the Palestinians. Some of the world's nations have turned a blind eye, unfortunately, some from our own Arab countries, by normalizing relationships with Israel. And that's their personal decision. I'm not going to go into details about that. I'm not a politician. I, as a Palestinian artist, believe that there are so many ways of resistance that we could do through our music and through our art. This is a very strong means of resistance. It is bloodless, it is violence, non-violent, and I believe it is our right to do so. Unfortunately, Israel continues to suppress those voices and suppress many, I would say many outlets. A censor would be a really good word to use here, censor. Especially, for example, through Facebook. We've seen a lot of censorship through Facebook. And mommy is on air, and I'm not happy about this. And because I told you to be quiet, baby. So I wanted to go over a few things that basically we're seeing happening in Palestine. We know, and many people know, that our culture is being ethnically cleansed. And we see it happening daily in Palestine, in Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah, where the names of the streets are being changed. The displacement of families, asking families to actually destroy their own homes with their own hands versus, their own destructive equipment and having to pay a hefty fine. Their land being confiscated, even their cemeteries being raided and being turned into, I would say, future parks. It's very disheartening to see all of that, and even seeing the dire conditions of prisoners or those who are being held without proper trial just because they want to be held and arrested. So basically, Israel's coming after everything that has representation of Palestine. It's being liquidated. Even if you see now the use of the Palestinian, they're not. even in Israel right now, they use the Arabs of 1948 or the Arabs in Israel, but they're actually Palestinian. They're ethnically Palestinian. Even they're saying that it's Gazans, but they're alluding to use the term it's Palestinians in Gaza. I see it a lot, and I try to call people out on that. We don't want to liquidate the term Palestinian whatsoever. So basically, what stops Israel from coming after our food, hijacking our food? And we've seen that where in a lot of its PR campaigns where makluba becomes Israeli or couscous becomes Israeli and so on, and even knafa and all that. What keeps them from deleting our existence, deleting our folkloric music? If they're trying to do that with everything else that we see on the ground right now, it's only a matter of time, until they come after our music, until they come after our clothing, embroidery, everything else is being hijacked. We already see it, and there's many. There's a lot of proof of that. So I think we have adopted many ways of how to resist as artists. And I think social media has really played to our benefit in the outreach around the world. And this is what exactly Israel is very worried and really concerned about, that we have voices and our voices are reaching around the world. And we see a lot of the singing has shifted from a pre-occupation to after occupation. The themes of the songs have changed. They're more resistance songs. The kufiya now has really become a symbol in our clothing. Everywhere we go, it symbolizes our resistance. So I think I really wanted to touch on those particular matters, how song themes changed into a more resistance type, poetry changed. We have more assertion on the identity and on our existence, our right to exist as Palestinians. Yes.
Well, I think that many of us despair of political situation changing, and a lot of us, myself, believe that nothing's going to happen until hearts change, people's hearts change. And it's through the arts, through music, through art, through dance, through poetry, that people's hearts will change. I mean, when people listen to Mahmoud Darwish, when people listen to you or watch the Dec5'21, I'm thinking of doing a protest for Palestine while Frank Romano was in town, the great activist lawyer. He's part of our group. He emailed me, he couldn't join us this morning because he's in rehearsals for a play about Bonhoeffer, where he's playing Bonhoeffer, so he can't join us, but he sends his regards. And whenever he's in town, we do a protest at the Israeli consulate here in New York. So listening to you, I'm thinking suddenly you inspired me. Maybe I'll get some people and we'll do Dec in front of the Israeli consulate and play your music, on a boombox and annoy and hand out, hand out our leaflets. I think that protesting the expropriation of Palestinian heritage, and I taught heritage and conservation in Jordan, and I had many Palestinian students, so it's an issue that's very dear to my mind. And I love your headdress. Is that a wedding headdress?
So that's oka. That's called oka. And okas are
it's so beautiful.
Many Palestinian women and weddings also, and particular areas of Palestine. I would say mostly Jerusalem. We have some up north also, but I got this from Jordan. It is
I know the embroidery each embroidery is different for each city in Palestine.
It is different.
Yeah.
I think somebody had a question. I'm not sure.
No, I think Richard was just.
Oh, okay. Yes. So every city in Palestine.
Say it again. What is it called?
It's called Oka. And I'll spell. I think it's like you would maybe phonetically spell it as WQUA, Oka. Okay. And it's worn by a lot of Palestinian women. I'm not sure exactly. I think it's more of the modesty, women trying to be modest back in the days, and it just kind of evolved culturally from one city to another. I love wearing it because it's a representation. It's like a tiara on my head. It just tells we're Palestinian, because the Lebanese wear it different, the Syrians wear it different. It's totally different. But the Palestinians, it's a lot of hand embroidery and work in it. And I always say every stitch is a story out of Palestine. Every stitch tells a story of these strong men and women and children that have persevered over time. And I think it is an honor to wear that. You know, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience, and I think it represents who we are with our steadfastness as Palestinians also.
Oh, there's an artist in Jordan that I interviewed and actually did a film at that's on my YouTube channel called Threads of Palestine. What he did was he was so fascinated by the women's embroidery that he watched as a child, that when he grew up and turned into an artist, he used the women's embroidery to create these beautiful statements about Palestine in his artwork, which includes all this embroidery. And he's on my YouTube channel. It's a fabulous, the embroidery is just awesome, just absolutely awesome. And you were top with the keffiyeh background. I've never seen the keffiyeh used as a dress. I think it's beautiful.
Yep, it's evolved into everything, tops, dresses.
It's
and
great. Oops, I think we just lost you.
Sorry, I'm here. So I think it's lovely that our Palestinian ethnic clothing has evolved into nowadays fashion that's being worn all around the world. It's a great way to embody that, the heritage, the Palestinian heritage by clothing, even by shoes. I own hand embroidered shoes that actually goes where the proceeds go to support women become more self-sufficient and support themselves in a time where, financially it's almost very tough for women to do so. Being under the occupation, it's easier to talk about it than actually living under the occupation.
How did you end up in Texas?
I ended up in Texas through, I ended up in the United States through family. And I ended up in Texas when I got married, moved here. However, my relationship with Texas starts as back as the first Palestinian festival that I participated in Houston. And I think that was my first debut in the United States. And from that date, looking at people and hearing their feedback after I performed on stage, I was very, very happy and motivated to continue on. And I can't even count how many concerts I've held so far and fundraisers. And I always participate in things that contribute to the welfare of Palestinians, especially humanitarian aid, whether it be in, something as simple as, clothing or medication or treatment, or education, anything that supports us as Palestinians on the ground.
You're in Houston?
I am in Dallas.
Oh, you're in Dallas. Okay.
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
I always say, Jacqueline, no matter where we are, we want to be open for dialogue to talk about what's going on, not turn the blind eye to what's going on. And I'm very concerned about the complete silence that we're witnessing in the Arab world politically, and the normalization of relationships. And I'm just wondering where all this is going to be. Is it going to be another form of suppression of Palestinians? Sorry, we do not mess with this, please. Thank you. Is it going to be another form of suppressing Palestinians from talking about their suffering or from continuing their actual resistance? However, I feel like we should always be very strong and steadfast in our ability to continue this mission.
Who can you dialogue with in Dallas? I mean, what are there groups? Are there many Palestinians in Dallas? Number one, do you have a Palestinian community? And number one and number two, who can you talk to down there? I mean, I'm a New Yorker, so anything over the Hudson River is, territory I don't want to go near, especially now.
We have many organizations here, like the Dallas Palestine Coalition, the Peace. I believe it's the Peace Coalition also. Veterans for Peace. We have many active organizations that advocate for the Palestinian rights, and it's very, it's like a breath of fresh air when we saw the latest protests for Palestine. It was absolutely amazing. It was about, I would say, almost 20,000 people that participated in the actual.
Hear about that.
from all walks of life, people that stood in solidarity with Palestinians in the recent attacks on Gaza. It's great to see the world just continuing to stand in solidarity with Palestinians. Even nowadays songs, through Mohammed Assaf, for example, Ana Dami Falastini, which means my blood is Palestinian. It's wonderful to see a mainstream artist also continue that message through his music. Also, he had a new release called, I believe it's Galilean Palestine. It says, or songs from Palestine, أغاني من فلسطين. So it's lovely to see that going in parallel with his music career as a mainstream artist. I feel like if we continue to put the pressure on the Israeli government over time, I think we will create that effect. We will create that domino effect. All of us working together tirelessly as artists, as poets, writers. Every single element creates that effect. I don't think one can exist without the other. I feel like we all are a link in the chain that will eventually liberate this land.
Well, if you come to New York City, I'll set up a concert for you. I live in Westbeth Artist Housing, largest artist community in the world. Oh, there's your cat. And surprise mine. Well, they're not fed, so they're having a morning nap. I feed them before I go on Zoom, so that they're asleep and not on my keyboard.
Okay.
But yeah. So if you come to New York, I could help set up a performance here. I'd love to do that. We have some awesome singers living in the building. So you got to Texas, and but have you been able to visit Palestine?
I have not been able to visit Palestine, unfortunately. And it's one of those dreams that I really just kind of like visits me every day. It's a dream, and I hope that one day it will come true. There's a lot of logistics that go into that, and legalities, of course. It doesn't mean that I have an American passport that I could just go in freely. And I think now with COVID, it's making things even more and more complicated. But it's one of those dreams that I would love to go and visit my homeland and visit our ethnically cleansed town. So it's one of those. It's one of those dreams. I'm sorry about the background noise. It's the kids.
Oh,
So.
What one thing that's kind of hopeful is that the guy who was the American ambassador or whatever to Israel, the American, just before he left, he visited Yam Hashish, the village that was destroyed, where the massacre was, and I was very surprised by that. That was his final move that he did in Israel before he left. So I think definitely there's a sympathy for Palestinians now as the truth comes out. The truth will eventually prevail, and good will prevail.
The truth will prevail. We are portrayed in the media as we are terrorists, and we want to, we don't want the existence of Israel, and we don't want that. Well, nobody wants the existence of an occupier. Nobody wants the existence of somebody who is inflicting so much harm and so much pain on their people. And I feel like this is a humanitarian right, is to live in peace and to live in just basic human rights. We're not asking for too much. We just want our basic human rights. That's the least we could say. And we want our lands that have been pretty much occupied back. We want those back. You cannot make a wrong right. No matter how much you try, you cannot make it right.
Well, it was interesting. We looked at a film 2 weeks ago, which was a documentary with Israelis and Palestinians reflecting on 1948 and what happened. And my students in Jordan, they all had the keys to their houses, And I remember when I went to Ramallah, the big city square, the big sculpture in the middle of the square is a giant key. So what was interesting is that passion for the land, that even the second generation is not forgetting where their home was, and where they came from. And this is very important.
And a lot of us
that right of return alive. And I think that Holocaust survivors were given the right of return, and I don't understand why Palestinians shouldn't be given it also. But the guys in this film was interesting. The men, the older men who had been soldiers in 1948 felt guilty. They were living in a house that they had stolen from a Palestinian. And the father felt guilty. But the son, who was like in his 20s, said, I don't care about history or whatever. This is my house. I'm living here. I don't care about anything else. I don't want to hear any of the stories. So that the younger Israelis many of them seem to be losing any memory of conscience of like the older ones who remember the atrocities. But of course, in Israel, there's also a huge peace group, a population of people who are, oppose the occupation and are embarrassed by it. So it's, I don't know, I feel hopeful in one respect on some days, and other days I feel despair. I'm sure.
That's a normal feeling. And a lot of people might listen to me and say, "Oh my gosh, she is anti-Semitic." I'm like, no, we coexisted with the Jews many years before the occupation happened, and I still believe that we could coexist if we look at each other in equal ways as human beings. But if we're going to look at each other as, oh, they're subhuman, they can go on separate roads, they're not allowed to live here, only Jews live here, that's the definition of apartheid. I don't know how much you could sugarcoat this, to the world, but you can't.
Does anybody have any questions? Richard, do you have any questions?
No, I want to say something. The medias are controlled by the Jews. That's why we don't get the real story, except on their side. And about the Semite, it's driving me crazy, this Semite thing. Noah had 3 sons, Sem, Ham, and Japheth. So all the people in the Middle East, from Iraq to Lebanon to Palestine, Jordan, are Semite. That's it. The Palestinians are Semite, the Jews are Semite. Those in this area, born in this area, are Semite. Netanyahu was not born in this area. He is not a Semite. So to define, most people don't know what a Semite is. I found even Lebanese, and I say, hey, you're a Semite. They say, no, I don't have that disease. Yes, you do. you're a Semite. That's it, But until you know what a Semite is, so when you go against a Palestinian or against Lebanese, you're anti-Semite. That's it. That's all. That's my say anyway.
Yeah. And Richard got thrown out of Israel. He can't go back there. Oh, sorry. Oh, I won't say it. Okay.
It's okay. I don't care. I don't even know why they threw me out. Maybe I'm a dangerous person. Maybe I'm anti-Semitic. I don't know. I don't know. I still today. No, I don't know. I will, God willing, go back in Israel. I got a few places to check out, but inshallah.
Will they did they say you were thrown out for a certain amount of time or permanently, or what did they have?
Honey, they stamped my passport 3 times. La. Nobody ever saw that. Like, wow, they really don't want me there. So, but God has his own plan, and they're not gonna like it. But I don't think at the end. I'm pro-Palestinian, actually. When I first came into this neighborhood, I was pro-Israeli because that's what a Canadian only learn about the good Jew and the bad Palestinian, and they throw rocks and we got to throw them rockets. And after spending 9 months in Amman, and I became pro-Palestinian and not so hot about the Jews. Now I know a bit more what's going on.
You have to say Israelis, not Jews, because a lot of Jews don't like Israel either. So you have to clarify. Or Zionists.
Yeah. Actually, it's the Zionists that I'm against.
Jewish friends, all my Jewish friends and some of my family are very upset with Israel. So
when an Israeli talks about the Palestinians as undermensch, this sounds like Hitler. Undermensch, subhuman.
Yeah.
You know, Hitler would be so proud. Hitler would just roll it in happiness of the way the Zionists are talking. They're not even Jews, they're Khazarian. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. Yeah. You have, and Canada has been extremely pro-Zionist, and I'm but I think that's beginning to turn around a little bit. But they have been extremely pro, anti-BDS and very pro-Zionist. So I don't know. I think Israel has a lot of. It's all about following the money. The countries that, and I think this goes to the Middle East and the countries in the Middle East who are now want to be friendly with Israel. It's all about money and economics. It's
don't forget the religion. Don't forget the religion, honey. The
yeah,
Talmud. The Talmud. If you're not a Jew, you're an animal.
yeah.
That's what they're teaching. The basis of everything. Everybody looking at religion. I mean, at politics and money. You kind of forget the big thing called religion. The Antichrist is religious. No, there you go again. Shut up, Richard. Shut up.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you. Richard is living in the mountains with the Druze in Lebanon. So he's doing very
the
well.
most wonderful, welcoming, friendly people I've met in my whole life are the Druze. The Druze, what they call them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got many amazing Druze friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Nisreen, what are your plans now for? Do you have any events coming up, or do you have any campaigns you're going to be doing? What are your plans now?
So I with the COVID shutdowns and it's really put a dent in our outreach. So basically what we've relied on is a lot of the activism online through Zoom and lectures. And I think now with things starting to get better, of course, we've started to get a little bit of more activity, more towards the humanitarian causes, serving the humanitarian causes. So I've used my voice to help garnish that support. My main plans, I've got 3 singles in the tubes that will be released at the beginning of the year, hopefully. That's my plan, is just to increase my production as an artist from my own personal singles. And I think we're on the right track with our dedication to the cause. And I'm really hoping we could also increase the amount of performances around the United States and hopefully through Canada, should the COVID situation not exacerbate itself.
Well, come to New York. We'll have you singing here.
I would absolutely be honored to, and it would be such a privilege.
Yeah, and I always have a place to crash. I have a futon couch that my dogs will give up for guests. So I was wondering if you could, we're coming to the end of the hour, and it was just such a privilege and pleasure to speak with you, Nisreen, and hopefully happy to know Texas has so much support for Palestinians. It's kind of a shock for me, given my New Yorker's negative view of Texas. So it's really giving me a sense of hope. So I was wondering if you would be able to sing us something, maybe tell us what the words mean, and sing us something before you.
Yes. So I will be singing a very popular lullaby. It's a Palestinian lullaby called Yamma Mweli al-Hawa. And basically, Yamma Mweliya, Darb al-Khanajir wala Hukm al-Nadil fiya. And it's a song about the woes of the occupation that the Palestinians feel, and how much pain it inflicts on them. But it also talks about hope in regaining the land, and through resistance. And it's become a lullaby, and I've lullabied my children to sleep to this song. And I'm sure you could also look it up online and look at the exact translation of it, because it is an absolutely beautiful.
You have a YouTube link to it?
I can probably provide you with it if you wanted to attach it to the show.
Add to my grandchildren.
Absolutely, yes. I would love to send it to you, Dr. Jackie. The song goes, يما موال الهوى يما مواليها ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم النذر فيها ومشيت تحت الشتاء والشتاء رواني والليل لما أتى ولع بالنيران بضل عمري فدا نبر للحرية بضل عمري فدا نبر للحرية يما ويل الهوى يما وليا ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم النذر فيا ضرب الخناجر ولا حكم النذر فيا بارودي في الجبل على من العالي مفتاح درب الأمل والأمل برجالي ويا شعبنا ويا بطل أفديك بعيني يا شعبنا ويا بطل أفديك بعيني أفديك بعيني أفديك بعيني.
Oh, wow. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I think I
Thank
can go take a nap afterwards. I relax me so much, you know.
Thank you, Dr. Jackie. Thank you.
And Muqtadir Hussein has joined us. I hope you enjoyed that beautiful lullaby. Muqtadir and Muhammad and Samad on Facebook. So thank you so much, Nisreen. This was so special. And we have to do this again. When when you get your releases out, let's do a show about your releases and your songs, and let's get people to buy them.
Especially that there's a wedding song in the whole in the collection of
wonderful
singles. Yes.
Well, I'll have to look for someone maybe. So,
well, weddings are a big part of the Palestinian culture. It's all about the weddings and the parties. So
I went to so many weddings in Jordan, Palestinian weddings. It was, well, you just, made my day. What can I say?
I tear up when I sing sometimes, sorry.
Yeah, and it was so beautiful. My heart is floating. That last song was just magical. So we love you, Nisreen, and we send you our peace and our blessings. Salam, Allah Yasamek. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackie.
So we'll do this again. And
thank you so much.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, on Facebook.
Thank you, Nisreen. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay. Tom, I'll be doing your thing Monday, so we'll miss you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My Zoom is finally working. It wasn't Mossad, it was just me. Okay.
Well, here's that for them.
Right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Masalama.
Masalama. Have a great day.